moving to the subject of data, which is obviously one of the key and most important issues that organizations are addressing as they embark on their transformation. I was talking to technology leader a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about data and how that was really the beginning point for any certainly for any AI project. You just needed to have clean data before you started any project, otherwise it just wouldn't work. We talked about the data lake, which is obviously a metaphor that people use a lot, and he said, well, really, I encounter a lot of data swamps when the lake is growing, but it's just turned into a swamp. And to use a recent analogy, they needed to drain that data swamp before they could actually embark on any IT project or AI project. So to talk about data, as the first of our expert insights today, I'm joined by Karthikeyan Rajasekharan. He's the Senior Director of Data and AI Solution Sales for APAC for Microsoft. And his subject, intelligent data transformation starts with a strong data-driven strategy. Karthikeyan, over to you.
Thank you. Let me just quickly share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lachman. And I think no audience is more attuned to the fact that data is strategic than this group here. And for me, data is a passion. I've been in the industry for 22 years and background in data science, and I absolutely love where we are in terms of the transformation that we're seeing in industry and the role that data is playing. I think one thing the crisis is teaching us is that no business is immune, and where no business is 100% resilient, but companies which have digital capabilities are able to pivot a whole lot better, right? And the common situation we see is a lot of companies come to us and ask, hey, how do I make sure that the power of the data is actually being reflected and I'm able to make decisions at a much quicker pace and take advantage of a wide range of services that I could potentially offer to my customers, etc. So nobody is unclear about the fact that data is strategic, right? But, excuse me. Nobody is unclear about the fact that data is strategic. And what is important is how we get on that journey, right? And what we find that, and when the way we think about it at Microsoft is this idea of an intelligent feedback loop that data drives, which we call a digital feedback loop. So we're able to basically store and instrument across these different dimensions. In the previous panel, people spoke about different aspects of digital transformation: customers, operations, your own internal employees, and how you would transform products that you and services that you offer to your end customer, right? But the core of this is being able to instrument each of these processes and then have them send back critical digital feedback to the source, send critical information back, and in return, using analytics and intelligence at the core, we are able to reason and get better insights and drive a better outcome for all of these different pillars within digital transformation, right? Whether it being building deeper relationships with your customers, being able to have a more effective employees, or being able to use product telemetry to actually develop better products, or using operational data to actually make more efficient ops. All of that hinges on being able to have this virtuous digital feedback loop in operation, right? So, and that's how we think about it at Microsoft as well. And we have taken many of our customers on that journey, and being able to do all of that hinges on being able to have a data strategy and quality of information and data, and then being able to democratize that at scale. Take, for example, Walgreens Boots Alliance. They've been working with us using analytics services and bringing multiple disparate sources together to be able to anticipate customers' needs. They're able to do something of the order of 200 million item store combination forecast on a daily basis, so that the 7 million customers that actually visit the stores actually have the products that they need when they reach the store, right? And with the power of the newer technologies that are available in the cloud, they're able to process this at most 3 times faster than what they would have been able to do. But the heart of all of that transformation slide in being able to recognize and bring all these disparate sources together in a unified data strategy that fueled a whole range of innovations. Now they're adding AI, ML services on top to be able to actually service their customers a whole lot better. And that's on the retail side. If you flip to banking and finance, a completely different industry, but we've been working with Westpac on building a data-driven experience platform that is at the core and the heart of their entire customer experience, right? It delivers personalized, intelligent, and autonomous services, but it has a whole range of information sources feeding into it from across the group. And all of that information is aggregated and being able to use in a secure way. Understandably, this is the banking and finance industry, but still be able to handle it with compliance and security to be able to drive that digital experience for their end customer. And it's been at the core and the heart of their digital transformation journey, right? And if I were to quickly switch gears and look at the manufacturing space, one would think, hey, manufacturing, how does this all apply? Once again, we have been working with a lot of our customers, and data-driven manufacturing transformation is at the heart of digital transformation within manufacturing space as well. Take, for example, Outokumpu, who's one of the world's largest stainless steel giants, and they have a very data-driven mindset, right? And their aspiration is to have the lowest environmental footprint by making sure that how they treat scrap and continuous development in the processes and energy efficiency. And driving all of that is their ODP, which is the Outokumpu Data Platform, which has data wires running to every single part of the manufacturing process through sensors to automation and the like. And all of that information flows in, and they're able to use that to drive predictive performance and able to reduce a significant portion of their operational wastage, almost 40%. So you might think, hey, I get retail, I get banking. Does it apply to manufacturing? It applies equally well to the manufacturing industry as well, right? So this notion that across customers, operations, products, and employees, the fact that we're able to instrument a lot of these processes today, and then be able to collect that data at scale, and then be able to unify that data and drive predictive insights out of it, is a phenomenal advantage. And it's a huge strategic advantage for all of the organizations that we work with. But it's a journey, right? On the right-hand side is the feedback loop that I spoke about, but there are a couple of things that we need to take clearly into account. There are some foundational work that we need to work through that drives higher value on the innovation and the strategic value and the capabilities that you have. And most organizations think of these in two different buckets. One is around the data estate, and the other one is around application development. And you got to think about both of these at the same time, and think about how all of these come together to drive that digital feedback loop between data modernization, data migration, app modernizations. And as these two come together, the apps get far better with pre-built and infused with AI. And that in turn provides higher level quality of analytics, which in turn drives a very virtuous cycle. So that's how one ought to think about it. And that's how we think about it, driving digital transformation with a data-powered strategy. But as you go through this journey, it's pretty important to have a framework as guardrails, and because I've spoken to many different CDOs across the region, and Placing data at the heart of the organization is not that easy. It presents a lot of different kinds of challenges. Um, Increasingly, the chief data officer is not just doing data analytics. They have to be a data entrepreneur. They have to be a data developer. They have to be a data defender, an architect, governor, ethicist. There are a whole range of new demands that are arising out of it, and establishing a framework for guardrails to support that journey is absolutely critical, right? And and the way we think about it is to think about it in terms of key principles, right? And so the common question that most people always end up asking is, hey, how do I find my data? How do I access the data? How do I keep my data secure? Am I compliant, etc.? From those common, as we went through many, many different customers, we split those concerns into three different buckets. And the first one is around preparation. The second one is around agility. The third one is around resilience, right? And so the preparation focuses on the governance and managing the system. Agility focuses on being able to have the architecture that manages the container. And the resilience is about focusing on the data lifecycle itself and managing the content. And organizations that we have worked with, including ourselves, which go through this, are the ones that look at all of these in association with culture and strategy to create that unique potential. As was earlier referred to in the previous panel, culture is an equally important aspect of how all of this comes together. Now, we did this for ourselves, right? When Microsoft started on this journey about roughly 8 to 9 years ago, we ourselves had some of the same challenges that our customers face today, and we are consulting and helping our customers with. We had a legacy data estate with multiple different stakeholders. One of our critical internal data sets, for example, had 300 over copies, not just to mention the lack of visibility on the second or the third copy, etc. So we also recognize that we need to do a revamp and think about a modern data estate with a clear data strategy, enabling the intelligent apps with trusted data. And we went on that whole journey ourselves, right? We had to do all of this, and we also needed to do this because when you think about Microsoft as a company, we went from a licensing model to a cloud-based delivery model, where the licensing model, the average size could have been anywhere between $200, $300 in a volume licensing model, whereas in the cloud, our transaction could be anywhere between $3 to $4 at the smallest level. So the volume of the data was also growing for us as a company. So we had to go through that whole journey ourselves of creating that modern data estate that fuels the AI, that fuels the modern analytics. And it's a different in the sense that we think about this as a shared data services and a modern data estate, whilst reducing duplication significantly. As we went through that journey, what did we learn and what does good look like for us? If I were to simplify it, it's this notion of being able to have discipline at the core and the flexibility at the edge. There's a centrally governed resourcing model that drives how Azure Data Lake subscriptions, and so that contains and controls the data sprawl. But each of the data lakes are federated in the sense that we have multiple different groups of sources feeding information to it. And we also formed a centralized working group, which had all the different stakeholders, finance, HR, legal, sales and marketing, and our core services engineering group all come together to work on figuring out what should be that shared services model and what should be that federated data lake architecture. And obviously, being on the cloud, it's multi-tenantable and centrally hosted, all of those benefits that you get out of Azure. So we wanted to maintain that agility with federation, but we also wanted to be able to control the data sprawl and cross while promoting the data engineering and the reuse. And so we went through that journey ourselves, and all the different stakeholders came together, and that's how we ended up on that data strategy journey ourselves. Now, let me talk about what the results of those were before I tell you what that journey actually looked like. But for example, in the case of within the finance operations, in terms of general accounting, there's been a huge people productivity increase in the terms of our own internal usage of cloud capacity and how we use compute. That's been a huge reduction in how we are handling those things. We have annualized savings in terms of vendor reduction, FTE active, full-time employee activity optimization, etc. And reconciliation, which is a huge problem for most companies, we're able to close the books so much faster because AI and ML is now actually driving a whole bunch of work around financial planning, forecasting, etc. Right? So the wide range of capabilities from anomaly detection, all of that was fueled by that data estate and the journey that we went on. And that's the journey we take our customers on now. So how does that journey, right, go from concept to reality? First, like I said, we focused on this notion of a virtual data lake, a shared analysis tools at the top, which drive the BI, and the shared data services underneath that. So those were the three conceptual layers that we worked very uh, focused on. And this is the same data strategy that we work with our customers and consult with them and help them go on that as well. Because if you get that right, then you can bring the compute to the data lake, and then you have a very nice separation and concerns between the publisher and the user while still enabling that feedback loop, right? So the publishers publish to the data lake, there's no pull in there, and the central governance in terms of the subscriptions, and then there is a compute to the lake pattern, which optimizes the whole thing. So the first thing we established were federated data lakes. And to be fully transparent, this was not a big bang approach. And most of the customers I've worked with, this has never been a big bang approach. We've started with our finance data lake first, but we did run it in an agile model. We ran it in 2 sprints, 4 weeks, and we were able to deliver on the data lake service because we made sure it was automated, had the standards and etc. So to make all of that work, we developed the first layer of the data services that we needed, which was around handshaking, control, ingestion, and data quality. So with that first iteration, we kind of had a sense of what those shared data strategy services ought to look like, and we put that all together. And then we were able to then apply on to the next level of intelligence services, which was around the master data service, the common data model. At this point in time, we brought in the ML and the AI models to run a whole bunch of work, including stuff like, say, for example, variance detection, where you could set configurable variance rules and workflows. We were able to run our Azure cognitive service and anomaly detection models, which would figure things which are out of outliers, etc., or even new patterns and so on. And so we were then able to use all of these advanced services to bring all of these together in a way of running this as a simulation service, right? So that was then finally at the interface layer with the user, that's where all of the AI conversational chatbots, the innovation lab, which allows the end users to basically run a whole range of what if simulations and ask different kinds of questions, and also being able to deliver out all of these insights as APIs so that they could be plugged into in an automatic fashion into multiple different end user applications as well. So that's how that progressed. And at the top layer, as is always required, there is a notion of the shared analysis services, which is reusable and configurable by each customer within their own contained environment. And we did all of the stuff around the dashboarding, the cubes, et cetera, on top of that. But the intention behind doing all of this was to drive that use case enablement so that it frees the end user from the constraints of the data location, locality, etc. It frees the publisher from having to worry about a whole range of stuff by having a federated data lake model. And putting that all together enables the compute to focus on the critical workload, because now you can bring the compute to the data lake and publish and post almost any of the stuff that is done. So we had a centralized data science team and a dashboard, but at the same time, there was also federated data science experiments happening all across the organization as well, which is driving a whole range of new breed of insights and intelligence. So the intention behind doing all of this is to get them to drive towards the critical workload and the values they bring. So this was the data strategy that we internally worked through and adopted and drove from end to end. And this is the same kind of approach that we work with our largest customers and work with them to make sure that they avail themselves of a similar thought process and learn from the journey that we have been, right? And intention behind doing all of that is to ultimately power those AI use cases. We have done this in a whole range of banking customers, be it in customer experience, which is on the customer side of the digital transformation pillar, employees side of the digital transformation pillar, or in driving the operations for the banking. There's a whole range of work that we have done on payments and AML and fraud protection and the like. And we've done fuel the same kind of approach with the manufacturing side of the house as well. So as an organization, we partner with our customers to do all of this. There's a whole range of work that we have done. What I spoke about in terms of data strategy is one aspect of it. There is also work around one needs to think about focusing on data culture, figuring out those initial use cases to create some digital feedback loops. But it's a journey, right? And that journey begins with you thinking very clearly about what that data strategy looks like, because everybody recognizes data is a core strategic asset, but figuring that out and then going on that journey that gets you to a single version of truths, breaks the silos, empowers everyone, drives efficiency while at the same time providing security and privacy. With that, I would stop and see if there are any questions that I could answer.
Yes, thank you, Karthikeyan. There are quite a few questions coming through on the Q&A, which possibly we can get to a little bit later, but they are around a theme of culture. And you talk about a data-driven culture, and there's suggestions from some of the audience that really a problem still lies in buy-in from management, that people in our area here in IT really still have a job to do to convince senior management to get with the program with data, and this opens up sort of deficiencies in terms of governance. I'm just interested in your comments on that. I mean, and governance, where does that come from, if not from management?
Yeah, so that's a two-part question. So I'll first answer the culture bit and how we can drive change in that fashion, right? So I'll illustrate it with the actual customer example. One of our customers is, I can't mention the name, but they were in the process of providing services that required them to provide DCs as an offering to a whole range of other customers, right? And the CIO in that particular case was really wanted to transform the way that business was operating and wanted to create net new data-driven projects and outcomes and services. So we worked with them and we actually helped them instrument all of the equipment that they had in their data centers, right from the chiller equipment, there's about 300, 400 equipment, put that all together, pulled it into the cloud, and they wanted to go and try and do this big bang. What we constrained them and kept it in one DC. And that allowed us to actually get the buy-in from senior board level to run that experiment. So start with a bigger vision, but constrain that initial experiment to be one where you can learn very quickly, which is what we did in that particular case. And within 2 months, we had them operational, and the entire analytic predictive model actually predicted chiller failures in 3 different systems about 2 weeks before they actually happened. And that itself was a proof point that drove for the change. So looking for those kind of cases, thinking in a broad terms, but constraining to experiments where you can learn really quickly to show some value, constrains the perceived risk from upper management, but at the same time provides you an opportunity to learn and tweak, would be one way I would think about that. To the second question on governance, yes, it is a central theme that emerges across the board. And it is often the more complex topic that we actually deal with when we deal with our large enterprise customers. And your mileage may vary depending on which end of the regulatory spectrum you are. And if in banking and finance, it's a bit more complicated. It could be slightly different in a few other industries. But it always, what we have seen really work really well is there is often a data governance council that is actually set up And we often at time help organizations actually think through some of those and figure out what that council structure ought to look like and things like that. But there is no shortcut around it. There is a need that arises, and it's only getting more important given the amount of data that we are capturing. So
Excellent.